Alrighty, this is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Ken.
I guess I could have stayed up here. Anyway, as I said, I'm Ken Cross. I'm an alcoholic. I wore a sport coat because my sponsor's in town and he might sneak in and give me a hard time. He still lets me get away with jeans at the podium, but he's from the old school, you know. He's actually up at the PG with his son. But he said, I might come by there. Some of you guys know my sponsor, Milton Dicus. He's 72 years old, 34 years sober. He suffers from Parkinson's disease. When he speaks, it's like lotus blossoms come out of his mouth, you know. The only problem is you can't sit next to him if he orders soup. It's really scary. We were at a restaurant the other night on Saturday, and they brought a bowl of soup, and I thought, oh, man, I hope that's not for this table, you know. It's bad enough I sat next to him the other day. He was eating spaghetti up at Johnny's Pizza. And my friend Susie Spain was here, too. I don't know. Are you still here, Susie? Maybe not. Susie and I worked together back in the early 80s in treatment. Wow, a lot of newcomers, packed room, a lot of people. You know, you guys are just in for such a ride. You know, the great thing when I looked around here and saw all the people that I know for a long time, you know, Sammy, Richard, a lot of guys, when every one of these guys came in, and myself, I came in here in a complete state of desperation, and I didn't even know it. You know what I mean? I didn't even know I was desperate. I was living in a stolen Volkswagen Rabbit. I had no idea where my next meal was coming from. I'd taken a Geographic back to L.A. because I took a Geographic out of L.A. because I was in a bad situation. And I didn't think I had a problem. You know, I just thought I was a victim of bad breaks and misunderstandings, and if only a few other things had happened my way, everything would be different, you know? And I was living. I was sleeping in my car up at Outpost in Mulholland before there were a lot of houses up there. There was a nice turnoff with a view of the city, so I would go up there at night. I would put towels up in the windows so that if the cops came by to roust me, I could like get it together and comb my hair. Because as I said, when we got here, our hair and our appearance looked a little different. And, you know, I'd wake up in the morning, and if you're new and you hear us talking about, you know, this is a one-day-at-a-time program, you don't have to drink or use just one day at a time. I mean, I've got 9,100 and 31, 2, 3, I think 33 or 34 one-day-at-a-times. And when you're living in a stolen car and you don't know where your next meal is coming from, my life had gotten down to be about 1 hour at a time. You know, I would wake up in the morning, I would go down to the 7-Eleven, I'd buy a cup of coffee and a blueberry muffin and an LA Times, and I would go to Plummer Park in Hollywood, and I would sit there, and I would read every single word in the LA Times because I had nowhere else to go. Nothing. And I bought those nasty blueberry muffins so that when you drink coffee with them, they blow up like a rock in your stomach, and they pretty much fill you up until maybe you can make it to Jack in the Box later in the day or something. You know, and I was one of these guys. You know, I was making phone calls, reaching out, trying to find somebody to help me out, and one person said they would see me. One person. My sister didn't want to have anything to do with me. My family didn't want anything to do with me. You know, I had a couple of friends in the rock and roll business that, like, you know, were kind of talking to me, but I was scared to death. You got to realize, I worked in the rock and roll business for most of the 70s, almost all of the 70s, and I crossed the line into my disease really heavily in about 1976, 1977, and then I proceeded to live there and see how far down I could go for the next 6 or 7 years. So in 1980, I got fired from my last decent job by a practicing heroin addict, and I was his connection on the road, you know? And so I had pretty much gone to a place where I was useless. You know, I was useless to anyone and anything and useless to myself. And, you know, one guy said, you know what, I'll meet you for dinner. And I met him at Barney's Beanery. And we sat down, and I got 12-stepped in Barney's Beanery with 180 brands of beer in the wall, you know. And he said to me, he goes, there's another guy coming. And I said, well, who's this? And he goes, it's my friend Charlie. He's my sponsor. And I went, what do you mean he's your sponsor? And he said, well, I've been in AA for 1.5 years, and I have 90 days clean and sober, you know. And yesterday at the noon meeting where I identified at the West Side Pavilion, where's Gordon? Happy birthday, man. You were a crier, dude. That guy could go through some napkins during lunch. But you know what? He's here. And there's a lot of guys from 4 years ago that aren't here, and that's the scary part about the disease, too. And what was I talking about? Oh, Charlie. And Charlie, the guy who 12-stepped me, showed up at the meeting yesterday. But being a good alcoholic, he had a resentment, so he left. But you know what? I don't remember a word they said to me. Man, this is a good bottle of water. You guys are high rent over here. I don't remember a word he said to me. I don't remember anything about what they were talking. It was probably the old line about, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, why don't you hang out with us? And I'm telling you what, I've been living in that car for a good 2 weeks, and I'm thinking, if he'll take my phone call, he'll put me on his couch, he'll let me hang out at his business during the day, and he'll feed me. What do you want me to do tomorrow? Where do you want me to go? Where do you think I should, what do you think I should do? Sure, I had to nod up and down like that. If it involved anything about you taking care of me, I would do whatever you wanted me to do. And he said, you can stay with me, you just can't get high, and literally, that was it. I went to this meeting the next day, and this guy was talking a bunch of crap up there about his life, and I was not relating. I was so uncomfortable. They sat me in between Zachary Holland and another guy, and I was trapped and couldn't escape. And I was like, and Zach was like nonstop in my ear. Hey, dude, what's happening? Just insanity. And I'm sitting there counting Rolexes thinking, man, I am in the wrong place. I can't even afford a hamburger, and I'm hanging out with all these guys that are like, doing the deal. And then a guy raised his hand and shared, when they called people for participation. And this guy talked about being on a relapse. He talked about that he had some time and he'd gone back out. And he was one of those alcoholics and one of those drug addicts. Tinfoil on the bathroom windows, and drink himself to sleep with Quaaludes and Jack Daniels, and making sure the house is secure at all costs. And, I'm thinking, I relate to everything this guy knows, because, some of my best houses had tinfoil drapes, I especially liked my house that was painted chocolate brown inside and out, and I had chocolate brown furniture, so you could always find the rock if you dropped it, The problem was I had pleather, and it was in Georgia, and if you fall asleep on pleather in Georgia, it's like really hard to get off of that without ripping a couple of layers of skin off. And so this guy went on about his stuff, and I thought, I understand what this guy's talking about, because he's talking about the disease, I understand that. I didn't get anything. They were talking about steps and God and Chinese arithmetic flying over my head, and I went up and I introduced myself to this guy. This guy looked like Kramer on crack, man. He had black hair, and he was, kind of tweaking and stuff, and he invited me to a party at his house in Bel Air, and some of you guys remember Dr. George, and he's still around. George is taking a cake, I think this week also. And, and I identified, and the same thing that Chris talked about. This man came up to me, and he gave me my big book that I still have today, and he said, I want you to take this back. He goes, do you have a place to stay? I said, yes, I want you to take this back, and I want you to read chapter 3. He didn't say go to the front page, go to the blank page, stare at the space between the lines, read the foreword, go to chapter 1. He said, you need to go to chapter 3, more about alcoholism. And he said, if you have any problem with the words alcohol or alcoholism, substitute it for anything you want. Cocaine, cocaineisms, heroin, heroinism. Today it's like crack and crackism, or Vicodin and Vicodinism, or, you could just do a Heath Ledger deal and garbage can yourself to death, I guess. And, and I took that thing back and I read it. And I read chapter 3, and I started to read the first couple of pages, and I started to hear what they were talking about with the disease of alcoholism. Now, I come from a family in New York City. I'm right outside of New York City, and my mother and my stepfather were both complete practicing alcoholics. My mother died at 47 years old. Last time I saw my mother, she was in a halo bed with screws in her forehead to hold her head in place, and blood was dripping, and the only way she could communicate with me was by blinking her eye. And I thought, you think 47's kind of old until you turn 47, and then you realize it's not as old as you might think. The last time I saw my stepfather, Well, let me tell you the first time I saw my stepfather. My mother, my sister, and myself lived in a cottage like some of these Mar Vista two-bedroom deals, you know. My mother slept on the pull-out couch in the living room, and my sister and I had the bedrooms. So Christmas morning, I get up, I want to go open presents under the tree, and my mother's in the fold-out bed, which is kind of next to the tree, and in bed with her is my soon-to-be stepfather, who she had just picked up at Sing Sing the night before, who had gotten released for doing 3 to 5 for armed robbery, and she had met him taking his mother up, who was her barmate, to go do visits with him on weekends. He was an ex-Marine drill sergeant and an ex-con who was going to teach me respect. And like most alcoholics, he knew everything, and there was no getting around it. And, you know, and he beat me into oblivion on many times. I've got broken feet, broken fingers, broken arm, broken jaw. You know, it's a good way to lose weight, have your jaw broke. But last time I saw him, I was in Tucson, Arizona in a parking lot of a strip club with Dirty Dozen on one side and Mongols on the other side, and everybody with a lot of guns, you know. And he disappeared in the sunset. Nobody knows whatever happened to that guy. I imagine he's dead. And so alcoholism was not anything I was going to be a part of. I come out of the village in the late '60s, flashing peace signs, hanging out at the Fillmore, taking Osley, you know, crawling around on my hands and knees, tripping. There was no way I was going to be an alcoholic, you know, and it wasn't until I was sober a little while that I started to remember that when I traveled on the road, first it started with a bottle of Kahlua in the suitcase, just to like sweeten the coffee in the morning, because the hotel coffee is always so bad from room service. And then it started, and plus the booze was always free, so I would just take it from the dressing rooms at night. Then it turned over into, well, if I got the Kahlua, I might as well get some vodka, because I could put the vodka, the coffee in the cream and, you know, kick it off. And then it became the vodka, the Kahlua, and then the amaretto to sweeten it up. And then in the end, I think I had a whole over-the-shoulder duffel bag that was just for the Jack Daniels, the Kahlua, the vodka, the amaretto, anything I could steal out of the dressing room at the end of the night. But I wasn't an alcoholic. The fact that I drank myself to sleep every night just to take the edge off with a handful of Quaaludes and a bottle of Jack Daniels or Wild Turkey, that didn't make me an alcoholic. I was way too cool to be an alcoholic. So when I read that, it hit me, you know, because everything in there I identified with completely. You know, the inability to control my drinking. Over and over and over again, trying different things and coming up with the same results. I mean, every single thing in Chapter 3 fell on me like a brick, a wall of bricks. You know, and I thought, wow, maybe this is what my problem is. Because when you're 31 years old and you've grown up and you're living in a stolen car and you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you start to kind of believe that you've grown up to be the piece of crap that your stepfather told you were going to be, you know? And I had really gotten to that point where I thought I was crazy. I mean, there was a time earlier, I was back in Macon, Georgia, and I was out of my mind, and I thought, you know, I really need to dry out. The problem was we didn't have Blue Cross Blue Shield in my business, and the only thing available was a mental institution. And I thought if I check into the Georgia State Mental Institution in the state that I'm in, because at the time I had hair almost to my waist, and I'd been up for a few days, you know, and I thought if I check in, are they going to let me out when I want to leave, you know? And that was a real concern because I was really afraid that they might not let me out, and so I wouldn't do it. And I proceeded down that other road and another bottom and another geographic there. Ooh. The ghost of my mother working the lights. You know, so when I got here, I was like beat. And they told me what to do, and I did it. They told me to get commitments. They told me to go to meetings. I went to meetings every day, 2-3 times a day. I would be the last guy out in front on the sidewalk looking for somebody to go to coffee. My friend let me sleep on his couch for probably 5 months. People gave me dollar bills to put in baskets. People bought me coffee and pie at Junior's when I couldn't afford it. I worked as a gopher. I moved furniture in the rain. I mean, I did absolutely anything I could to survive on a daily basis. I was scared to death. I was absolutely scared to death. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how to do anything, you know. And little by little, my life started to get a little bit better and change a little bit more. And I started to go back into trying to work again. And I started to get some jobs. And I started to come, you know. And I thought, well, this sobriety stuff is great. You know, I'm gonna be sober for a year, and I'll have another Harley, and I'll have another place in Laurel Canyon. I'll be back in the music business. Life will be grand. You know, and at day 366, I said to my sponsor, well, like, where's mine? I was living with a woman who 13-stepped me. I was still driving my stolen Volkswagen Rabbit for my transportation. And, you know, and I was working, you know, freelance film business stuff, which isn't always great. And I just couldn't understand why my life was so unmanageable. I had a year of sobriety. Don't you understand? And on top of it, well, I guess I have to back up a second. When I got into this relationship with this beautiful young lady who kind of 13-stepped me, Mickey remembers her, Kathy W. Very well. I saw her a week ago up in Ventura. The sad thing is that, like, I knew Christopher when he had black hair, and, you know, we all looked a lot different, and boy, we just all aged, unfortunately. I came in here at 31. I showed somebody a picture of me in the phone from Christmas 1983, and they went, no, that can't be you. But, you know, I was one of those, you new guys know, because you want to be in love. You want somebody to fix you. You want to be validated. You want her to take care of you, because you're living in fear. You don't know what you're doing. And this woman was showing me some attention, and I thought, I need to be in a relationship, And my sponsor said to me, he goes, how do you expect to be in a relationship with a human being when you can't even have a relationship with a coffee cup? And it was like, whoosh. I heard it kind of go over my head, but I didn't quite understand what it was, It was like sponsor talk that kind of flew by. And I said, what does that mean? And he goes, why don't you get a cleanup and see what it means, cleanup commitment somewhere and see what it means. And we used to all go to a meeting called the Whatever Meeting up in Hollywood. And it was 300 people on a Tuesday night. It was absolutely insane. It was like this on steroids, probably. And we would all take our chips there, and we'd try to be profound like chip takers are, and you could still smoke in meetings. And I remember taking my 60-day chip in this room, and I couldn't even light my cigarette. I was shaking so bad, when I was up there. And I got this cleanup commitment up there, and I would show up every week, and I would ask for volunteers. You know what? In 6 months' time, I knew tons of people. I started to develop relationships with people. I started to have people that were just friends for me showing up and hanging out with them. And some of those people I still see today. Michael Steinberg I see on a regular basis. A lot of these guys are just in my life today. And I'm all over the place, but that's okay. I think I'll breathe for a minute. Anyway. What I've learned around here in 25 years is nothing changes if nothing changes, And the funny thing is I don't do anything that much different today than I did 25 years ago. The point is I still do it every day. There's Chris. I almost said the other name. Oh, it says Uncle Buck. Okay, Buck. I've known him since he was Buck, not even Christopher. That's the other scary part. But, there's a group around here called Back to Basics, and then there's one of the groups called Back to Basics where they're taking people through the steps the way the old-timers did it. Back in the 80s, there was a thing called The Table that was the same thing. And my sponsor has this line, and he goes, you know what, you don't ever have to go back to the basics if you don't leave the basics, And I literally, to this day, I don't do anything that much different than what I did at 60 days. Except today, it's not all borrowed furniture, and it's not, living on somebody's couch, but I wake up early in the morning, usually around dawn. I make a cup of coffee, I sit there, and I look at the remote control, I look at the LA Times, I look at the Big Book, I look at the 12 and 12, and I think, who's going to win, And about 15% of the time, the weather girl on Channel 11 wins, and a lot of the other times, the books win, Eventually, I always get around to the books because now I've gotten into this habit where I send out an email every day to about 600 people. And so when I don't do it for a couple of days, I get 1 million phone calls. Are you okay? Are you not feeling good? Are you isolating? Are you depressed? So I've gotten myself into this corner where I have to do this every day. When I wake up and I read the same AA literature, I have the same AA Big Book. The thing is that there's no secret Big Book back there. There's no secret meeting directory back there. If you're new, you guys have the same tools as every one of us had. I still have the same book, the same 12 and 12. For my 20th birthday, I bought a first edition 12 and 12 that I keep wrapped up tight, because I really believe in the 12 and 12 now further on in my sobriety. And, I have a fantastic life. Mickey and I have spoken in different countries around the world. I mean, the sirens outside were nice, but there's still nothing quite like the blessing of the haggis with the bagpipes going on in a meeting, That or the monkeys swinging through the thatched roofs in Costa Rica when you're in a meeting. You know, I've been blessed. I've been around the world in sobriety. I've gotten, you know, the other day for my birthday, I got emails from Jakarta, from Hong Kong, from Moscow, from, I mean, just around the world, people that I've met, people that I've gotten to know, people that have opened their homes to me, you know, Shanghai, China. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. I had one person left in my life that was willing to take a phone call and willing to have a conversation with me, you know, and my life is so full and so open. And my life is weird as hell right now, you know? It's like I have one crazy life. And some of the guys that know me know, you know? I mean, I worked really hard for a lot of years doing a lot of different things, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I built a career for myself. I had a good little life, and I got sick, you know? And one day I went into the doctor, and he told me, you got 90 days to live. You need to get your affairs in order. And I thought, this is like a TV movie. Are you serious, you know? And he goes, yeah, you know, we're absolutely serious. And then he sent me to another doctor who told me the same thing and scared the shit out of me even more, you know? And I was like, what the hell is going on? And that was March 14th, 2002. And from that day forward, I haven't worked. My life turned on a dime. Twice now, on two different occasions, I was told I was probably going to die within the next 90 days and to get my affairs in order. And when, you know, when you're 50 years old and you're 20 years sober and they start telling you that, you know, the lug nuts are coming off, you know, get ready for a really crazy ride, I mean, it was insane. I mean, everything I had, I pretty much I didn't actually lose, but everything got really different really fast. You know, and one more time, what I thought when I was new, that where's mine? Where's that ring that I chased for so long? Where's the toys and gifts and prizes that I worked so hard for? When it all kind of changed really quickly, and what I was given AA at a whole nother level. You know, I was given AA in a completely another level. Because I would go to a doctor's appointment at Cedars, and I'd come out, and there would be 6, 7, 8 people in the waiting room that I didn't tell I would be there that day. You know, when I went in for surgery on the morning at Cedars, it was like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. There must have been 20 people that showed up to be there and hold my hand. The first conscious thought that I have after my surgery is a sober doctor friend of mine, Mike, holding my arm and stroking me, telling me that I had no cancer, I was clean, and it was going to be okay. I couldn't even see, no less think, but I heard that voice, you know, and it was that soothing tone of somebody who loved me. And what I've learned is the greatest gift that I've been given is the relationships I have with the people here. You know, when I was new, I mean, I worked rooms the same way I worked bars, because I hung out in bars my whole life. That was my social order. I knew how to operate in a bar or backstage or somewhere. I came in here and it was the same pecking order, you know, and that was the way I did it. And over the years, it slowly began a process of changing and understanding that people are here for me. You know, if you talked about love when I was new, I didn't want to know about love. My mother never said she loved me once in her life. My grandmother at best a couple of times. It wasn't a thing that was talked about in my family. I never saw kissing. I never saw affection. I never saw holding hands. None of that stuff, you know. And today I have the greatest admiration and respect for the men in my life, you know. I mean, I don't see Buck that much anymore, but you know what? The minute I see him, I mean, my heart lights up. You know, Robin the same way. I mean, I'll give these guys a hug. I'll kiss them on the cheek. I mean, it's just, you know what? Because they are it. They're the foundation. They're the rock. They're the core. I still go to 7 to 9 meetings a week, and 5 of them are a men's stag. And I live in men's stags, and I love it, you know, because those are the people that pick me up and they carry me. You know, my sponsor has this great line. He goes, you know, you learn how to swim, and you learn how to swim for life. You learn how to ride a bicycle, you learn how to ride a bicycle for life. He goes, you come to AA, and it's good for about 3 or 4 days. And I don't, oh, delayed reaction. I see. They have to think about that one. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I don't go to a meeting for 3 or 4 days, you don't want to be on the 405 with me at the same time, you know? Just not a good idea. You know, or if I'm on my bike and somebody cuts me off. I mean, I was, you know, some young man cut me off a couple of weeks ago down by Abbott Kinney, not only once, but he cut me off twice, you know. And so I'm getting up next to him in a complete rage, because when I'm on my motorcycle, I'm that much more vulnerable, and I'm thinking, I'm going to pull this out of the side of his window, and you know, and I'm just like looking at this guy and screaming, and in the back of my head, I hear my sponsor's voice go, "You are not a cop." Mike knows, you are not a cop. And I thought, you're right, I'm 6 blocks from home, just go home, you know. And for a long time, I had to post them on my dashboard that said, "You are not a cop," because it's a tough one for me. I should be a motorcycle cop, I think, you know. It's 2 things I like the best. It's to tell you how to drive and to be on 2 wheels. So, you know, I'm a really, really, really blessed person. My life is filled with an extreme amount of love and gratitude and people that I just respect and honor and love so much. And, you know, and it's all because of the principles and the values of Alcoholics Anonymous that I was taught here. You know, many years ago, I was going to tell that story you like, but it's the wrong kind of meeting, I just remembered. No. Many years ago, I went up to Akron. I went to Akron, and I went up to Akron to talk, and you know, all I wanted to do was go to Dr. Bob's house, you know, because I'm thinking I'm in the Mecca. I got to go to Dr. Bob's house. I got to do the pilgrimage, you know. So I go down, after I check into the hotel, I go down in the restaurant and I meet some people, and it's like, you know, who's going to take me? Where? So, you know, they load me up in a car. We go there, and we're walking around Dr. Bob's house, and, you know, we're sitting there at the table, red and white tablecloth. Mickey's been there a few times, right? The beautiful couple. I don't know if the couple was there, but this older couple that kind of watches the house for the foundation, and then they take you upstairs and they show you where Dr. Bob hid the booze, you know, and the dumb waiters and behind his bed and in the planks that moved. That boy drank, you know. And then they take you into a second bedroom that's like a museum, and it's got the jewelry cases with the literature that they read back before we had a big book, and the Emmett Fox stuff and all the other. And then they sit you down in front of a TV and they show you a movie about how Bill and Bob met, and they use the real hotel lobby. And, you know, it's just this amazing, amazing experience. And I got up and I'm walking downstairs as we're going back down the stairs, and I just start crying. You know, I just absolutely start crying. And this little woman, she must have been 80 years old and about 5 foot tall at best. She comes up and she pats me on the back and she goes, "It's okay, honey. It happens to a lot of people." And then I just like, then I really lose it, you know. I'm like babbling. So then they take you down into the basement where you get your Dr. Bob swag. You know, you get your Dr. Bob t-shirt, your Dr. Bob coffee cups, your Dr. Bob ashtrays. You get your unedited version of the Big Book, which is the original Christian St. James version of the Big Book with all the God stuff not deleted. And, you know, I'm down there, you know, spending away, and I look over to the side of the room, and there's some bushel baskets over there against the wall, and it's filled with all these pieces of stones and stuff. And I say to this woman, I say, "You know, what is that stuff over there against the wall?" And she goes, "Well, we had a problem with dry rot on the back of the house and the porch, and we've had to take the whole porch down and the whole foundation down, and we're rebuilding the whole back part of the house." So I look at her and I say, "You're telling me that that's the foundation from Dr. Bob's house?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I say, "Well, can I have some?" And she looks at me like I'm crazy, and she goes, "Yeah, I guess so." So I'm like over there at these 2 bushel baskets, like filling my pockets and taking my t-shirts and wrapping the t-shirts so they don't break the coffee cups with the rocks, and I'm like just loading up on stone, you know. And you know, I go to this convention and I talk during the banquet, and I mean, I could not stop crying the entire night. You know, I was so moved and so filled with gratitude. And you know, and over the years, I've broken pieces of stone and given them away for birthday presents over the years to now I have 1 piece about this big left, and I'm sure every week my cleaning lady wonders, what the hell is that, and why do I have to dust it, you know? And, but you know, I came back to L.A., and it was right around the millennium, and there's this guy, Scott Peck, that wrote the book, The Road Less Traveled, which was an important book to me in my early recovery. And they asked him, they said, you know, he's a non-alcoholic therapist, and they said to him, "What do you think is the most important event of the 20th century?" And without missing a beat, he said the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous was the greatest social revolution of the entire 20th century. And what I realized is that when I was back in Akron, that I was at the place where the rock hit the pond, you know? I was in the place where the big stone landed in the middle of the lake and the ripples just all started, you know, and that I have gotten to become just one of the many little ripples from that one, you know. I'm just another rock in the pond. I'm just a guy who gets to be a part of, gets to stay in the middle, gets to stay right-sized, gets to be crazy with my own self and my own alcoholism, but is given tools and guidelines and steps to deal with my behavior and my actions on a daily basis. But that most of all, I get to carry a message to an alcoholic that still suffers, who doesn't understand how not to drink or use one day at a time. You know? That I get to be a person who's broken the chains of alcoholism in my family. My son's never been beaten the way I was beaten. My sister's in Al-Anon. Her family's never suffered the abuse that she suffered. And that we're all just small ripples in this great big pond of what Bill and Bob started, you know? And because of that, I've realized the absolute incredible amount of gratitude that I try to carry with me on a daily basis, you know? Because without any of it, you know, jails, institutions, or death. And that's if you're lucky. We have a friend that smoked crack after 13 years. He had a stroke. He's living in assisted living, can barely move, and he's trapped inside of his own body. He would have been better off dead. He would have been better off in jail. Because one more time he had to hit the pipe. Today I don't have to do that. Today I don't have to pick up a bottle of Jack Daniels because somebody cut me off or because she said something to me, you know, none of that stuff. Today I get to show up, I get to laugh, I get to cry, I get to feel joy, I get to feel gratitude, I get to experience love on levels that I never felt before in my life from both men and women, and I get to share my life on a daily basis. You know, my life is full and rich, and it's all because of the principles and the values of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, and I can only hope for you guys the kind of grace and the kind of blessings that I've been given. Thank you.